Right. Oops. Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone was enjoying the lunch break. Before we start, I just need to excuse you because I've started to develop some throat issues this morning. So please excuse my unique voice if it starts to break, but hopefully it will last for the next 45 minutes. I'm here together with my colleague Michał. And we are here to present you, well, a different flavor of the topic, because for the next 45 minutes, we will be discussing hardware-related topics. Hardware is probably not the most obvious things for the DevOps guys to think of, because from what we know, you mostly guys focus on working with software. But as we all know, software requires hardware infrastructure to run on. Okay, and well, historically, we've always been taking for granted that the infrastructure, the hardware, the machines will be there for, to run or host whatever we need them to do. But, well, it's not really as, well, the landscape has significantly changed over the past couple of years. So if you've not been exposed to hardware infrastructure challenges, hardware infrastructure related challenges, that means that your hardware guy or girl in your company does a really decent job, and after coming back to your workplace, you should really thank them a lot, because their job has become much more challenging these days than it was a few years ago. And that's exactly what we're going to focus on today, to kind of deep dive into some of the challenges that the hardware infrastructure, the data center market experiences. We are going to do a spotlight for EMEA, because this is where we are all based and operating on the market. So, before we start, also just to level set, this is a professional conference, so I'm pretty sure that every person in the room here today is very much aware what cloud is and what is not, but you would be surprised how many people these days still believe that if something runs on cloud, it literally lives in this fluffy white object on the sky. Okay? Who needs hardware infrastructure these days? Hardware infrastructure will get extinct soon because everything runs on the cloud, isn't it? The truth is, yes, those fluffy white objects on the sky do not really store or process or host digital data, so the cloud essentially is someone else's machine. So the confusion comes from the fact that these days, some companies decided not to run and maintain their own data centers, so-called on-premises data centers. Maybe you've been to the server room, maybe your company has on-premises servers rooms, that's fine. But a lot of companies, small, big ones, hyperscalers, we all do it. More and more companies decide to move their workloads to the cloud, meaning someone else's data center. But still, the data center is a data center, and everything that runs on the cloud requires the exact same hardware infrastructure. Okay? All right, so let's look into how the data center market looks in EMEA. In general, as a word of introduction, there is roughly 10,000 data centers worldwide. 1/3 of this is in EMEA, which is quite an equal share, 1/3 of the data center market globally, which is pretty fine. And you probably see the resemblance that the data center market in Europe is some sort of a hamburger. Okay, we've got the top, we've got the bottom, we've got the sides, but the core, the meaty part of the data center market, this is where the most of the data center capacity is located, this belongs to so-called FLAP-D market. And FLAP-D is just an abbreviation, the first letters of the 5 main cities that host the largest part of data center capacity in Europe. Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, and Dublin. Okay? Well, a lot of those main hubs have fiber links connecting to the fiber backbone that is going across different continents. This is where places like London and Amsterdam really win out, because they've got a lot of fiber links converging in one place. Okay? This is why some of those are the ones of the big hubs. Dublin itself is a very interesting city. It's the 5th one on the list, recently added, because it used to be a FLAP market. These days it's FLAP-D market, because Dublin growing power a lot. We are going to deep dive into those later in the presentation, but Dublin alone has 82 data centers that consume approximately 20% of Dublin's electricity. Quite a lot, isn't it? Electricity, power, these are the words that you're going to hear a lot throughout this presentation. All right, interestingly enough, the largest data center in Europe is not located within this meaty part, FLAP-D market, but it actually belongs to Portugal Telecom in the city of Covilhã, if I pronounce it right. Please excuse me if I'm not really a Portuguese speaker. If we speak of the largest data center, also an interesting fact, the largest data center worldwide belongs to Facebook's owner, Meta, and this is the data center in Singapore. Now, as you can see, this is really a huge structure, whereas it's not that common for data centers to build that large. It's not typically what data centers do. However, when you go for that crowded and dense market as Singapore is, so you might recall this tiny little dot at the end of Malaysia, that's pretty much your only choice because the land is very much constrained there. So if you want to have a data center, a big data center in that market, that's your only choice. Typically, what most of the data center providers globally do is they go for building campus sites. So few buildings consisting, shared facility, few separate buildings. So not really going that tall, more occupying a little bit more space. And this is where things get a little bit complicated because finding the largest standalone data center building was easy. That was Facebook in Meta's building in Singapore. For the data center campus, it's not that obvious. There are some providers that claim to have the largest site worldwide, mainly in China. So China Telecom claims to have at least two that are kind of targeting to be the largest ones. But there is, however, some issues with China-based companies, as we know, that, it's not that easy to verify that information. What happens is China Telecom declares on their website that they own this astronomically large site, but some people, especially in US, tried verifying this information. Some were even cheeky enough to look at satellite pictures to actually see if such an astronomically huge investment could be spotted from the space, and they struggled to actually find it. Okay, that does not mean that China Telecom is lying. That's not what we're trying to incline here. What that means is sometimes companies, vendors, declare the ultimate size up to which the investment is supposed to grow, but then they either build it in phases, and that's most likely what's happening with China Telecom investment in Inner Mongolia, so this northern part of China. They're most likely growing in phases, but we don't exactly know in which stage they are. Okay, they've not reached the maximum size yet. Or some investments just need to scale down with time because either the demand isn't as projected or the money is not really there in place to continue growing. But from what we know, the largest data center campus, and this is a verified information, belongs to another Meta's facility, and this is the data center campus in Prineville, Oregon. So Facebook leads the pack for now. All right, so now enough of interesting facts. Let's look into how the typical data center is built and what it consists of. And that's going to hugely help us in the later part presentation to understand where some challenges are coming from and why data centers run into trouble these days. So, starting with a small scale, the personal computer that we all have, at least one, or if not multiply, consists of a hard drive to store your data, a processor able to modify that data, some networking hardware to connect to the internet, and probably a battery of a power supply to provide energy for that all. And as the electricity passes through your hardware, it produces the heat that is then cooled by the fan. So data centers take those core concepts of a single individual computer and scale them to enormous levels. So instead of a single hard drive for storing your pictures, documents, whatever it is that you store on your laptops or computers, they consist of multiplied thousands of hardwares and very powerful processors within servers that are able to store, host, and process vast amount of digital data, for example, the entire video catalog of YouTube or Wikipedia or whatever you can think of. Those servers are stored within energy incentive racks that consume incredible amount of heat, and that heat requires very specialized cooling systems to regulate. Maybe some of you had an opportunity at some point to visit a data center room or even a server room in your company. If so, you've probably noticed that those places tend to be quite chilly. And that's exactly how they should be, because we need to regulate that heat, okay, to make sure that our hardware infrastructure has optimal conditions to run on. So, as per design, the optimal temperature conditions for hardware infrastructure to operate on are 18 to 27 degrees Celsius. And I'm going to request you all to bookmark this information for the next 30, 40 minutes of the presentation, because we are going to refer to it once again when we start speaking about the challenges, because those temperature ranges have been compromised quite seriously these days. So 18 to 27 degrees Celsius. Okay, data centers can also have very different ownership structures. So we've also seen with Meta, for example. Meta is a good example again, because they like to maintain their own data centers and they have these huge investments for Meta's own data centers. But a lot of companies, and again, it's a combination of small companies, medium-sized companies, even some hyperscalers, instead of maintaining their own data center infrastructure, they just decide to rent some colocation space in third-party providers. Our company, Akamai, does the same. Google does the same. Google does both, actually. So they have some Google-owned data centers in some locations. Depending on the market, they just lease colocation rooms from third-party providers. So regardless of the approach, data center is a data center, and it requires a vast amount of reliable power supply to power its hardware infrastructure and cooling systems. All right, so we know what data center is, how much electricity it needs. Let's see what is actually stored, or why do we need those data centers? So the response is digital data. So we live in the world where we produce more and more digital data every single day. And this growth has never been as rapid as it is today. It actually is estimated that by 2022, we will be producing over 460 exabytes of digital data daily. And that the global data sphere that is currently estimated at approximately 60 to 70 zettabytes, within less than 2 years will grow to over 175 zettabytes. And if you struggle to imagine how much of the data that is, because I must openly confess that I struggle a lot to understand this quantity, we've got this graphical visualization here to help you understand the scale. This is enormous. Where is it all coming from? Well, we live in a world of constant digital transformation, with new technologies appearing and developing super quickly. And we speak of technologies like artificial intelligence, advanced robotics, big data, cloud computing, smart cars, smart cities, smart devices, Internet of Things, even 5G. This all adds to this growing mass of digital data worldwide. It is also estimated that by 2030, 9 out of 10 people aged 6 or above will be digitally active. And all the hundreds of billions of interconnected devices that we have in the world, most of them are producing real-time data. So this is really a super fast growth. And this growth needs a data center to be hosted at, to run on, to process this information. So powering this growth are data centers. This is all exactly where all this data needs to live somewhere. And data center is a response here. Two of the biggest drivers of this rapid data growth are artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. Artificial intelligence, we know this is a new modern trend. I'm pretty sure that every person in the room is experimenting with ChatGPT or any other tool available there because it's fancy, because it's new. We all want to know what it's capable of. Those artificial intelligence algorithms require vast amount of training data, as we all know, to get trained. GPT-4, so that language that powers ChatGPT, requires incredible amount of computing power to create and improve. Whereas the OpenAI, so the company that stands behind ChatGPT, does not necessarily publish exact figures, it is estimated that GPT-3, so the older language model, costed up to $4.5 million in processing power to train. For the newer model, GPT-4, that costs have jumped to over $100 million. And again, we speak of just processing power to train the language model. So it is expected that artificial intelligence will be responsible for as much energy consumption as Bitcoin is today. Bitcoin is not a new thing. It is present on the market for good some time right now. But did you know that Bitcoin runs on energy-intensive network? The machines performing the work consume incredible amounts of energy while doing so. And over the years, the total energy consumption of the Bitcoin network has grown to epic proportions as the price of the currency reached new heights. If Bitcoin was the country, that would be what you can see on the slide. This is how would it compare to some of the other countries. So the entire Bitcoin network consumes more energy per year than the country of Netherlands or United Arab Emirates. This is the level of energy consumption of the entire country. A single Bitcoin transaction consumes as much energy as the average household for 6 weeks' time. Imagine using electricity in your household for 6 weeks, 44 days. That's a single Bitcoin transaction. Powering this growth are data centers, energy-intense data centers that host, process, and store vast amounts of digital information, or everything that we've just talked about, and more, but that are fast becoming insufficient in capacity. And therefore, let's now look into some of the challenges that stand ahead of those data centers, especially in EMEA.
So Kasia was talking about some data center pleasant, relevant things. Now my turn to talk about the crisis a little bit. As the title said, we will be talking a little bit about the energy crisis and then its impact on the data center market in Europe. Let's start with a simple graph that's showing the natural gas price trend in TTF. TTF is a tidal transfer facility that's the main reference virtual gas market in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. In Europe. Sorry. And now a bit of history. Explaining when and why the price jumps took place. So the historic drop in global energy consumptions in the early months of the pandemic in 2020, that's what we can see on the left side of the chart. It drove the prices of many fuels, not only natural gas, to their historic lows in decades. During the pandemic, the usage of internet has exploded, and I'll cover that a bit later in the presentation. But the post-pandemic rebound that we can see post-May 20 and onwards was one of the fastest post-recession recoveries in the past 80 years. And it drove the prices of fuels up, but only a little bit. The key demand factor that played a big role here was cold and long winter in the northern hemisphere and lower than usual availability of wind energy during the winter. But the supply factor, in fact, controlling the price was Gazprom, Russia's state-owned company, Gazprom, which at the time was Europe's key natural gas supplier. And now let's dive a bit into the natural gas supply trend timeline by Gazprom. So starting from summer of 2021, actually August, this is the time when Gazprom has emptied its gas storage facilities in Europe. Probably you remember that, or not. Then in December, Gazprom has stopped the gas delivery over the Yamal Europe pipeline. But the most significant part is where Russia's invasion of Ukraine started in February of 2022. Then, after that, there was a reduction of the gas supply over the Nord Stream. And at this point, the prices have entered the panic mode. They climbed so high that some of the customers have stopped consuming entirely. And it's a phenomenon known as demand destruction. Europe tried to find some substitutes for Russian's natural gas, overbidding the US, Qatari, and Australian LNG, so-called liquefied natural gas, which resulted in further price increases. So we can see the spike. Liquefied natural gas is produced by cooling natural gas to minus 162 degrees Celsius to take 600 times less space than the regular gas. 2023 onwards marks a new normal, and even though the prices came back to their pre-crisis levels, multifold price volatility is now expected. But you're probably wondering, what does the gas price have to do with the data centers and crisis, and what is this guy talking about? So let's actually layer on the price graph of electricity on the gas, and you can see that's a clear example of correlation between the two, and it's a fact. It's a fact that that majority of energy is actually produced from the fossil fuels, which is gas and nuclear energy, that were supposed to be a green bridge between the fossil fuels, like the standard power sources that are non-renewable, and the renewable ones. But powering data centers only with renewable data sources is impractical in most of the cases. They still need some fossil fuels to either to supplement the green sources, as they are not always available, like the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, and so on, or as a backup, because things happen. So in here, between the green and non-renewable and renewable, I'd like to mention an idea from Microsoft, which is to deploy small nuclear reactors alongside their data centers to directly power them and to omit the risk of energy shortages. But let's go back to the price. In 2022, all over Europe, the price of energy has gone through the roof, like just completely off. To the extent that some of the energy providers have been forced to close down, especially the ones that sold energy at fixed prices to withstand volatility, because many haven't been able to pass on the wholesale price increases, as national regulators have strict regulations that limit how much companies can charge. This is why you haven't experienced a price increase in your household to the extent that is visible in here. Each European country has a different power generation mix. So, for example, Norway is using hydroelectric, Poland is using mostly coal, and so on. But the crisis has affected them differently, exactly because of that reason. So Italy, Germany, France, Netherlands were hit the hardest because their energy mix was based on gas, coal, and other fossil fuels, which skyrocketed. And electricity price in those countries were as much as 10 times higher than the pre-crisis average. So you can notice the difference between the two, and imagine explaining that to the finance department when your price is just going through the roof. Norway and Sweden were on the other end of the spectrum. They weren't affected as much, but still experienced price increases. The reason why the price trend looks similar for most of the countries is that their power markets are interconnected into a pan-European market. Through common energy market rules and cross-border infrastructure, energy can be produced in one EU country and delivered to another, either via overhead, underground, or submarine lines. And actually, the longest submarine cable is the Viking Link between Great Britain and Denmark, and at 765 kilometers, if I recall, it's the longest submarine power cable in the world, which can power as much as 1.4 million households. Can you find it on the map? I'm sorry? No, it's not. The top one is another one that connects to different countries, but it's like the second top one. It seems like it's the longest, but the top one is the longest, but it's actually not. It's the second longest. So, yeah, just a little bit. And again, back to the main topic. So the impact of price increases on the heavily power-reliant data center market is obvious, but not as straightforward as it might seem. There are different types of agreements that the data centers and their customers can have or procure power, which range from 100% spot market pass-through, that's just a direct daily price that's passed on, through hybrid ones, which is a blend of the two, and then long-term fixed pricing, that's the totally secure one. And depending on the scenario, the situation was either bad or very bad. Yes, the most challenging one was with 100% spot price, because 10 times more, that's what you pay. So not the most common one, but it happened. Yes, it did. But that's not the only challenge that related to energy that the data centers companies are facing. Increasing pressures to meet the environmental, social, and government requirements, so-called ESG, also come with an additional cost, as companies need to certify that their energy is green, and so many companies are signing power purchase agreements, helping to bring many renewable projects online in different parts of Europe, Spain, Italy, where the sun is shining, and so on. And those companies that serve the PPA services help claim companies that their operations are sustainable. Data center hyperscalers such as Meta, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are some of the largest corporate energy buyers on the renewable energy market, which with each of those having procured gigawatts of renewable energy through the PPAs, that's a lot. That's actually very lot. They're investing in the global energy projects globally, not only in Europe. But their renewable energy projects were not only used to generate the green badge that we're green, we're using renewable energy, and so on. They were also used to cushion the effects of price increases. Because even though the hyperscalers have enough market power to withstand the price increases for short term, in long term, they are not immune to withstand the economic trends and just swallow the price. And as I've shown, another challenge is security. So it doesn't always mean intrusion prevention. It also means preserving the data in the event of local or global disaster. The most extreme example, as shown, is the Arctic World Archive in Norway. It's a secure, underground, and unhackable data vault at the bottom of the permafrost. It's 300 below the top of the mountain and 300 meters inside the mine. And actually, even GitHub was interested in it because they have stored or archived in 2020 a snapshot of all public repositories. That's 21 terabytes worth of data, and stored it on offline optical film inside the Arctic archive. And now on to the next challenge, called the demand. Data centers represent a growing source of demand. That's what we all know, mainly for power, but also water and land, and their footprint will continue to grow. As data creation, processing, and storage needs to expand. Kasia has explained it very well in the previous section of our presentation, so I won't be covering that again. But the growth of the European data center market is driven by increased demand for computing and by a rapid migration of many business processes to the cloud. The pandemic has contributed heavily to this trend, with more people staying at home and car traffic reaching record lows. Nobody was driving. The internet has seen a tremendous global traffic increase. Companies have encouraged remote working. Schools have encouraged remote learning, boosting video conferencing services. "You're on mute" was one of the top sentences as a business phrase of 2022. Video streaming has grown so much that the European Union has called on Netflix, YouTube, and other streaming providers to temporarily lower the video quality to ease the pressure on the continent's broadband networks. So that was severe. The enormous demand of for the data center space generated by the quickly growing internet traffic quickly absorbed all of the available inventory at the main markets, so the FLAP-D, as we have seen before. This has created backlogs. As large customers and hyperscalers, and they have serious market power, they were pre-leasing the new data centers before they were even built. So you can imagine chasing for data center space when hyperscaler is just pre-leasing everything that's available. The constraints have led the customers, and especially hyperscale operators, to plan ahead and plan not months ahead, but years ahead for any data center build or expansion. Even if there was initial disruption because of COVID to the data center construction in Europe, because there was such, most have been given exemptions from that because by the European Union, they are considered as critical infrastructure providers. Without data and data centers, businesses, schools, hospitals, they would not be operational. Everything is based on the data center. And people continue to use the internet for almost everything. Information, shopping, entertainment. And what data centers need to ensure is that their web connection is fast and stable. And now, even though the pandemic is over, the demand for data center capacity is set to exponentially grow. And its trajectory as businesses experience rapid growth of artificial intelligence, along with streaming, gaming, and self-driving cars, is only going to increase. Thank you, and back to Kasia.
Right, can I get the controller too, please? Thank you. All right, so now let's see how those main challenges really look at the European market, or what they're translating to, because what Michał was talking about, the price increase, this is, as you can imagine, the least of the challenge for anyone. The energy is more expensive, true, but let's be honest, our business will always find money to pay the increased bill, okay? So the price is the least of worry for anyone. So deep diving into the FLAP-D market, letter F for Frankfurt. Frankfurt has a data center footprint of approximately 70 data centers that are estimated to consume approximately 1 gigawatt of energy. Just to put it in scale, 1 gigawatt of electrical energy is the equivalent of energy needed to power up to 70,000 households. Quite a lot. There was a growing concern in the market of Frankfurt that this growth, data center growth, will pretty much consume the land or power for that city, for that market. And because of that, Frankfurt has published an updated plan for commercial developments in the city, effectively restricting power supply to certain areas and therefore forcing the data centers to go more towards the suburbs. Okay? And that's exactly what's happening right now in Frankfurt. This is one of the most sold out data center markets. It's hardly possible to secure any data center space in the city of Frankfurt, and all the new investments are happening outside of the city. Okay? All right, Alpha London. London is of similar size to Frankfurt, but we could say that this city's challenges are way more challenging or more complex. Why? First of all, the most lucrative market for data centers, which is Slough, so the West London, west of Heathrow Airport, is finding this increasingly difficult these days to secure net new power supply for data centers. There's actually an increasing pressure on the grid in West London, as a lot of data center investments took place in the recent years, taking advantage of the fiber optic cables running through the M4 highway corridor before crossing the Atlantic. So this is a super data center dense region already, and basically the power grid cannot stand any more investments in the region. This is data centers. However, developers in London are facing the potential ban on any new housing projects by 2035, 12 years from now, with the sole reason being no option to deliver power. Okay, so this is equally impacting this householding targets for the capital, data center builds. There is space available, still actually a little bit, but there is no option to deliver power. Okay, so the city is really in trouble. So that would be power shortage, okay? Second challenge, the heat. Not the new news, we've all went through this. You'll probably recall last 2 summers, especially 2022, the record hot summer in Europe, especially for England. They've noted the record high temperatures, and that has, well, put really all the data center market in that region under the serious test. Temperatures ranging over 40 degrees Celsius are not really the perfect conditions for data centers. You probably know why. The cooling, not only needing to use more energy to cool down the data centers, but we'll take you through 2 examples where this actually did not happen, or the infrastructure, when forced to operate above or outside of the design conditions, just failed to work, refused to work. First example is Google and its data center in London. So Google experienced, in the summer of 22, experienced a major failure with 2 of the simultaneous failure of redundant cooling systems. Okay, they just stopped working, were not able to cool down the rooms. That caused massive problems to Google, starting from instance termination, service disruptions, traffic issues. That was really big, and then we speak of Google. Oracle had a very similar issue, also in the city of London. Again, due to the failure in the cooling systems, which just stopped working in those record high temperatures, they need some of the Oracle cloud infrastructure went to protective shutdown. And as you can imagine, that's not really what you want to have with your cloud infrastructure, okay? This infrastructure is not meant to go down. But again, the cooling systems just could not last. It was just too hot for them. So it's not only about the price, because you need more power to cool this down. It's just our present technology and the design conditions. The technology, the hardware infrastructure, the cooling systems, it's not designed to operate in this range of temperatures. And the data centers are struggling to keep up with this optimal temperature conditions I spoke about earlier, 18 to 27 degrees. This has been seriously compromised. And what we are seeing happening these days, not only in London, but across the entire EMEA market, is that data centers rooms are much more warmer. It's a very complex issue because it's also where you measure this temperature, whether you measure it at the entrance, in the hot air ale, cool air ale. Basically, it's a complex issue, but basically data servers rooms are not that chilly anymore. But our servers are still running and designed to run in conditions up to 28 degrees Celsius. How long will that last? All right, the third challenge for London, but not London, of course, is not the only market experiencing this, is the water shortage. Now, well, you can ask what has water to do with all that, okay? But actually, when we speak of data center sector, water and power are very much interconnected, especially if we speak of cooling systems. Now, without going into details, but they are two main types of cooling systems. One use power, energy, for air conditioning, and basically they generate whatever they need to generate using electrical power, and the other type is using water, cooling towers, etc. A lot of data centers in the City of London. Again, this is not only for London market, but we speak of London market right now. So a lot of data centers use the second method, so they actually use water to cool down the data centers' rooms. And water is becoming a very constrained resource too, as because of those temperature ranges, not only UK, but the entire Europe is experiencing the biggest drought for 50 years. So water is becoming a very pressure resource too, not only power, but also water. All right, so that would be London. Amsterdam is another super interesting market in EMEA. Amsterdam basically paused all the new data center developments in 2020. That ban was partially lifted in 2021, but again, that market has seen also some interesting case studies or corner cases with the data center developments. And again, the main character for the next story is Facebook's owner Meta. They are a big player. This is why they're appearing a few times during this presentation. So in the summer of 2021, Meta announced plans to build the largest data center in Europe in the city of Zeewolde, outside of Amsterdam. That, as I've said, was meant to be the largest data center at that time. If I'm not mistaken, of course, that was meant to be fully powered by the renewable energy. In that case, I think this was Fun Farm. Doesn't really matter, because in the end of the day, that project did not happen. Okay? As you can see on the slide, there was a massive residential pushback against this development. The city was actually scared and concerned that the data center infrastructure will eat up the electricity needed to power the city. And due to a massive social pushback, the Dutch Senate actually refused to sell the land to Meta, and Meta needed to cancel the entire project. They officially closed down this project in the summer of 2022, so like approximately 12 months later. That was Meta. There was a very similar case in another city outside of Amsterdam with an unknown developer, which press believed was Google, but that was not confirmed, so please don't take it as granted. That was just a press research. That was the same story, Google wanting to build a massive data center. Same story. It did not happen because they didn't get the land. They didn't get the permission to build in that region. So what we are effectively seeing in Amsterdam market is some sort of a hyperscaler moratorium ban. How long will it last? Is it temporary? We don't know. We'll see in future. Oops. This beautiful city of Paris. Maybe it will load. If not, yeah, you can imagine, exactly. I'm pretty sure you can imagine the beautiful city of Paris. So right now, Paris is fourth European data center market, but it is believed that it will soon overcome or overtake Amsterdam and be number 3, especially given the moratorium that we were just talking about in the Netherlands and Amsterdam market. So Paris has a massive demand. We'll see how quickly it reaches number 3. Currently, it is number 4. The demand in the, oh, here it is, you see? I told you, it is going to be Paris. So the demand in France is mainly driven by France Data Protection Act and the general data protection regulations, which we know is quite a serious thing in Europe, in entire Europe, but France really take it seriously. So basically, those regulations require businesses to physically retain information within the boundaries of the country, and therefore effectively forcing businesses to invest in infrastructure that will be able to support this data localization. And it's not a silly thing, really. You might have heard of, I think it was again Meta, isn't it? Who's been fined the record-breaking 1.2 billion euros for transferring EU citizens' data to United States. And Meta was not the only one. Amazon suffered a similar fine, not that high, but over 70,000 euros for transferring EU citizens' data outside of EU. So this is really serious in this market, okay? So the market should be booming, but of course there are some challenges, but France has some very specific challenges. Again, it's very difficult for developers and data center providers. Whoa, the city really, yeah, vibrant and dynamic, to secure the land and energy, but those challenges in Paris actually have a different source. There's a lot of constraints coming from the recently introduced zoning restrictions and the zoning restrictions for upcoming 2024 Olympics that make it quite difficult for developers, providers, and others seeking to build in the region. And we speak of especially northern Paris for the data center market in the city. So yeah, upcoming Olympics, we'll see if this is only temporary, but we've got at least 18 months for 2024, before 2024 Olympics. So for the data center market, 18 months is a lot of time. Okay, so we'll see how this trends for Paris. Interesting fact, if we speak of 2024 Olympics in Paris already, the largest data center provider in the region, it's actually one of the largest data center operators globally, Equinix, entered the partnership with the city of Paris to use or reuse the excess heat from data centers in the city to warm up the Olympic swimming pool, which is a great trend. It's a really good trend because otherwise that energy, that heat would go to waste. It needs some special adjustments. It's a good thing to do. So we thought it's going to be worth calling out. All right, and very quickly, the last one. So number 5, Dublin. Dublin, I've told you earlier, 82 data centers in the city, and similar stories. So right now, there is a ban on building new data centers in the city, simply because the local electricity grid cannot take it more. So the grid ran out of capacity to support any new projects. It has been publicly announced that there will be no new data centers developments in the city of Dublin until 2028, 5 years. However, there are some ways to overcome this, and for example, Microsoft was very smart about finding the way to overcome this power shortage in the city of Dublin, and they've recently received the permission to build a gas power plant. So they want to have a data center, they need power to power it, so they got a permission to build a power plant, so they don't need to connect to the local grid. So some cities are becoming very constructive and very creative about the ways how to secure energy, how to secure water. We also spoken about water. And as we come to the end of this journey for data center, or journey through the modern data center trends, I'm hoping that you got a feel into how challenging this market really is today. But where challenges are present, there's also a lot of opportunities. So we want to believe that there will be a number of opportunities and new trends that come from this situation. Again, if you've not been exposed to this hassle, just make sure that you invite your hardware guy, for a coffee to tell them that you really understand how complex their job has become these days. Data centers are the heart of the modern world. Okay? They power our interconnected life, and they are the silent heroes. And they support everything, from the critical infrastructure and critical applications to the cut videos. So thank you so much for bearing with us, and let's see if there are any questions in the room.